we get to meet Hecate, or Hecate. And it's interesting, the whole nature of Hecate is kind of ambiguous and multi-defined and not really quite defined, and even down to where does the name even come from? Is it Hecate, like in two clear symbols, and then get an E on the end and Hecate or Hecate, and so there's just multiple spellings and pronunciations, and right there from the get-go we get that this is not a simple clear thing. Hecate, being the Greek version, and the Roman version is trivia, which didn't at the time actually mean trivia as in trivial pursuit as in meaningless details, but actually trivia spoke to three ways. So a crossroad with 3 points meet. Yeah. Read somewhere that also, a Roman guard always get posted at such crossroads and be able to answer you all the questions that were relevant in the empire, in the world. So have all the trivia, have all the details. It's not at all trivial, it's specific. And right here you might see the arc of what's happened to this archetype and the whole feminine sort of archetypal aspects of ways of being and relating in the world being trivialized in the last couple of thousand years. What we do know is that Hecate doesn't even start in Greece or Rome, but there's multiple threads where Hecate was obviously around in some form beforehand. Yeah. One of the versions is Hecate may have actually come from Egyptian times and been the midwife goddess Hecate, or Heka, which means in Egyptian sort of magical speech. So all of a sudden there's this magic, there's witchcraft in effect, and there's also this birthing midwife goddess. Hecate has many hats, and I'll lay out many of these labels over each other and see what stands out at the end. Some of the various breakdowns of the meaning of her name, and I won't go into all the detail, but they kind of imply a number of things that I think are pretty interesting. One is that Hecate speaks to, or the root of the word speaks to, acts according to her will. So she has the power and she will make it happen. So it's like her will kind of governs in a way. She can do what she wants. She has choice. Another meaning is that she's sort of the absent or distant goddess. So she acts at a distance. She's unseen. You don't see it happening, but then things change. Right? All of this, I think, goes quite well with the magical root. So in the Greek pantheon, Hecate was cast as the only daughter of the Titans Perseus, which is all about destruction, he was, and Asteria was all about the sort of discoverer of the stars, and he led us to the wisdom of the stars and astrology. And so destruction and the stars, because they've got kind of two extremes here, an interesting admixture. And like Chiron, you can see that then she's kind of a bridge between worlds. She's a bridge between these two extremes. And she's known to be sort of ruling in the in-between. Yeah? At the crossroads, the thresholds, the intersection points, and the major sort of watershed moments of existence, like birth and death, going to sleep in dreams, waking up, but also in simple ways like at doorways or windowsills and national borders and the edge of the road, and any moment of crossing of where two things meet, and there's always that in-between somehow there. And this really then starts to speak to her sort of nature as being liminal or liminal, or actually has light, but also liminal as in not quite seen, that sort of glimmer on the edge of consciousness, just out of reach, the kind of the sense of a spooky action happening, if you Hecate was actually, in political terms, mediated between the two regimes of the Olympian to the Titan in terms of the grand mythos of things going on. So she's also then here, the in-between and the mediator, going and accessing between different states of politics to different states of being dead, being alive, being asleep, being awake, and between the sort of mortal and the divine spheres. And again, I see this connection in the echo with Chiron, the masculine or the yang healer, this bridging to polar opposites, and then Hecate being the very feminine character of it. This is a quote correct from Wikipedia. I think it sums it up well. Hecate was variously associated with crossroads, entranceways, light, magic, witchcraft, the knowledge of herbs and poisonous plants, of ghosts, necromancy, and sorcery. She was also one of the main deities worshipped in Athenian households as a protective goddess and one who bestowed prosperity and daily blessings on the family. In the post-Christian writings of the Chaldean oracles in 2nd and 3rd century CE, she was regarded with some rulership over the earth, sea and the sky, and thus becoming a sort of favoured goddess of shepherds and sailors, as well as a more universal role as a saviour, the mother of angels and the cosmic world soul. So we've got quite a few roles piling up here on Hecate. So regarding the nature of her cult, as being remarked, she is more at home on the fringes than in the centre of Greek polytheism. Intrinsically ambivalent and polymorphous, she straddles conventional boundaries and eludes definition. She was very popular then and revered by mortals and gods alike, doted on particularly by Zeus. We'll get back to that. And she's increasingly popular in modern Western times, particularly with the rise of feminism. We'll also go into sort of reasons as to why. In the popular consciousness, she's often related to as the triple moon goddess. This trivia, this three ways aspect, the Trinity keeps showing up in her. And she might be depicted as a single-headed being or a three-headed being. She might be seen as three different animals. She might be seen as the young child, the young girl, the woman. Could be a children and the crone, post-menopausal. She's often depicted with the three phases of the moon as a kind of crown above her head. I thought this was pretty interesting to give you again layers of these richness. Some of Hecate's epithets. I'm not sure I can pronounce all the words, but I'll give you the meanings. Hecate is known as the one that turns away and protects. She's known of the earth and of the underworld. The one that's on the way, you meet her on the way. The holder of the keys, so the keys to the gates at the moments of transition to life or death, or meanings of dreams and so on. The nurser of children, the bringing or the giving of light. She brings light into the darkness. The one who serves and attends, the one who stands before the gate, the saviour, the three-formed, and more simply, the one who frequents Crossroads. So, certainly the broader image of Hecate is always at the crossroads, this three-way trivia. The overall theme, I think, for who or what is the archetype of Hecate is metamorphosis. And it is about that change from one state to the other and what happens in between and how does it happen. And in that sense, evolution. At a personal level then, if I was to make it a more psychological interpretation, you could say Hecate is there to support you through these transitions where you might have many deaths and openings or need to make sense of your dreams or, what choice do I make? There's no right or wrong. There's a clear choice of different outcomes and sort of that personal sense of what is the empowered pathway forward and what's the illumination helping make a choice. And in these moments of sort of challenge and confusion, or when we're stuck with two choices, or middle, we're caught kind of in between one state or the other, the message of Hecate is that there is shadow at play. And if you go into the shadow, if you face into it, if you bring light and illumination into it, you can get more life from it. You can get healing, you can get clarity, insight, illumination, and make a choice, and take a step forward. And she's essentially saying, take a step into life, into wildness, into more vitality. There isn't a big moral preference on one thing or the other, just that sense of life. So some even equate Hecate really as the great feminine principle itself that is in everything and gives everything its ability to emerge out of nothing and metamorphose through all the stages of life and death and beyond, while not ever really being seen. So it's like the invisible hand of God, if you will, is Hecate, is the light that illumines everything. It's just liminal to our individual personal consciousness from a concrete standpoint. When you start to contemplate the universe, you start to contemplate Hecate's realm, how it became and how it becomes and how it transforms. So, there's the sort of the broad, grand narrative, I guess, or meaning for her. And let's just really swing another direction here and actually talk about outrageous laughter just got heard in the background. I think, oh, that's so appropriate. So Hecate. Okay. The actual orbit of her asteroid is actually really fast. It's about 5.5 years or 5.4 years as it goes around the sun. And Hecate was the 100th asteroid to be discovered, and she was thus named Hecate because Hecaton means 100 in Greek. It's very much an astronomer's approach to mythology. Hecate was officially discovered by someone called J.C. Watson on the 11th of July in 1868, orbiting in the outer main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. And she's located in the same region as the Hygeia asteroid family, but her composition, I think she's actually a lot smaller, means that even physicists refer to her as the interloper. So it's like she doesn't belong, she's not quite here, so even at a real crass physics level, you're getting exactly this mirroring of the mythological meaning of Hecate, of ambiguous, not quite here, there, in between, yeah. I thought it was really good. Everywhere I saw them as reflections. Kind of nature. So there's a lovely little sum up here from the Mythic Oracle Guidebook by Carissa Malado. I thought I'd actually just read the whole piece. It's quite short, actually. Hecate is an incredibly important, powerful and complicated deity. Although she appears throughout Greek mythology, she actually predates it. She is said to be the key-bearing queen of the entire cosmos. Hecate is associated with gateways to hidden realms of existence and is the keeper of sacred knowledge. She is present at the threshold of transformation and represents the road to unknown places. She is depicted as a triple-faced goddess with the heads of a dog, a horse and a bear, or those of a dog, a serpent and a lion. She may also appear as a maiden, mother and crone, representing the passages through the phases of life and wisdom. She's connected to wilderness and wild creatures and is guarded by black dogs. She carries a key symbolizing her role as a gatekeeper and a torch which shows that she is one who illuminates and brings wisdom. She brings light to dark places, revealing the treasures hidden in the unconscious. She also carries a knife, which represents power and discernment and the ability to cut through all things, and rope, symbolizing the cutting of the umbilical cord in birth and the severance of body and spirit in death. Hecate beckons you to choose a direction. You must make a decision. Change is inevitable, but the direction of change is completely up to you. Hecate is calling you to the untamed and wild areas of life. You must follow this deepest of calls. You know the decision you must make. It is probably a terrifying decision, yet it is one that will take you to your highest calling. Do not be afraid of what you feel deep inside. Follow that inner wisdom and let it lead you to your destiny. Which is a lovely, idealistic, mythopoetic interpretation of what could be some pretty damn gritty territory on a personal level. So, coming back then to try and cull a sense of the actual myth, we realise that there isn't, in many ways, the official story of Hecate or Hecate available anywhere, but she shows up in other people's stories, and pieces of her are present, and again at that luminal, at the fringe, at the edge, in other people's transitions. So she's sort of spread throughout the pantheon's great tellings. But the main myth is actually part of, she plays in Persephone's story, where she is friends with Ceres or Demeter, the Earth Mother, and the mother of Persephone, or Kore, the maiden, the young innocent girl. And when Persephone goes missing, Hecate aids Ceres by helping us search all across the known world with her torches to illuminate the way. When they don't find her, Hecate keeps going, and with her sort of far sight or insight, her psychic sight, you could say, or inner illumination, is able to see into the underworld and see that it's actually Pluto or Hades who's taken Persephone down to the underworld, to hell, and is able to then let Ceres know what's happened. Hecate is also the self-appointed protectress of women. Right? Hence the popularity of her in the feminist modern age, and she's also staunchly independent, a virginal goddess, not wanting to take a husband or be taken by a husband, and actually kind of is not interested in or partial to anyone's needs or cares or concerns about sex or marriage or any of that stuff. It's all kind of irrelevant to her. And that way you can see where the interpretation of the crone kind of matches up to that. She's past that. At least one aspect of her is. But because of this aspect, you could say she decides to accompany Persephone on her annual 6-month journey into the underworld, lighting her way down and guiding her safely through the darkness so she can return into so new life, into spring. So you get the sense then of her presence in the underworld, her support of the feminine, that she illuminates the dark, that she helps you go through that metamorphosis that is spring, that is from life to death and death into life again. Apparently Hades or Pluto is actually grateful for her support of Persephone and honours Hecate as a prominent and permanent guest in the spirit world, the goddess of ghosts. And believe that, see that why some of the Christians might then think Hecate is a dark goddess and probably evil. So, although she did help Ceres to find Persephone, again another face of Hecate is known to steal young maidens herself to assist her with her powers. So there's something about the virginal potency of the maiden that is then coveted by, used by the crone, by the witch. The upside is, of course, these women that later then became nymphs.
Okay.
Nymphs. N-Y-M-P-H-S. Common with the stories of Hecate are, it's rich in symbolism of how she's at the crossroads, she's there with the key, the rope, the knife. She's also usually with a dog and a polecat. And so these are kind of the animal spirit companions. And there's various myths that speak to their origins, but they all speak to metamorphosis. They were a demigod or another person or a witch or someone who then gets transformed into that dog or into that polecat, right? So her main dog is known as Cerberus, which is actually the guardian. He's actually the guardian to the underworld. So he stands at the gate, right? And is effectively Hecate in spirit form and her main sort of totem animal. I think she would culturally appropriate language to make meaning in the 21st century with. But Cerberus has usually depicted as a three-headed dog. Female dog with one head for the past, one for the present, one for the future. So again, speaking to that ability of Hecate and her symbolism to access all the directions, all the realms, standing between that intersection point, and be able to get you to wisdom, help you figure that out, rather than being limited like us mere mortals. She's also often depicted as being followed by many ghosts and demons. They're pleading with her, but to try and get what they want from her, but they're often being stopped from acting out their vengeances. She's also protecting people, and she's known to have three companion followers when she's in the underworld, the three Furies, who are punished offences against nature, and at their scariest were the three Fates, who spun and then dispensed and then cut the thread of life for all mortal beings, a very thin thread of our existence. She's also described as being shining or luminous, and you can various interpretations are spun off the fact that her mother was Australia, the goddess of the stars, and pointed us away to the wisdom of the stars, or the fact that she just kind of was actually smart enough to always carry torches with her to light the way. Another angle is that yes, it's the wisdom of the crone, but she's actually the beautiful woman. Yeah, and so that natural luminous sort of doesn't fade in her being. But you can see, particularly probably from the Christian influence, that Hecate is depicted as the old hag, the wicked witch, the crone, dressed in black and smelling and evil and out to get you and all kinds of nasty things. But back in the Greco-Roman times, she was actually the beautiful and powerful goddess, and she was dressed in white, and kind of styled like Artemis. She had the maiden's skirt and then big hunting boots, and had the moon for a crown, the three faces of the moon, just light everywhere. So back then, spoke about her being revered by gods and mortals. Zeus or Jupiter really prized her and put her above all other gods and goddesses. And so when he needed to pray to someone, who did he pray to? He prayed to Hecate. Right? And so if you think of the god of gods as praying to Hecate, this is pretty interesting. And in the transition of power between the Titans and the Olympians, this kind of political thing, Olympian seized control, Zeus allowed Hecate, and she's the only one, to keep her powers and keep her status. Right? Then Zeus shared with Hecate, and only her, is regarded as the awesome power of giving humanity anything she wished, or withholding anything if she so pleased. So Hecate has this incredibly special, again, bridging between worlds, between political systems, between dynasties of deities, and has this power that nobody else has. And that really speaks again back to that, the cosmic goddess with the key to all manifestation, all metamorphosis. She can make stuff happen, and she can take it away. So it's really big in that sense, but when it comes back to our personal charts or in our own life, as I mentioned before, it's like where Hecate is where we're probably experiencing some fundamental confusion, strife, indecision, our shadow acting up a real knot in our own being. Yeah? And you can see echoes again of the Chiron woundedness, which is why I paired Chiron and Hecate together to be spoken of. I think they're kind of the yin and yang faces of some aspects. And if you can get into that sort of shadow, you can bring illumination into that knot, into the underworld, into your unconscious, into whatever it is that's really karmically knotted up and messed up in that part of your chart, a certain house and a certain sign, then you can also find you've got amazing capacities emerging there. You've actually got magic, you've got ability to do stuff and create stuff and manifest things and heal, and in ways that seem, inexplicable, so hence magical. The same thing then around medicine, Kyle's medicine, is that engaging with the shadow is, which is the problem, surfacing is the problem, is actually the key to resolving it, and the key to transforming it, to metamorphosizing that part of you into a whole new way of being. Yeah, the symbol of Hecate is worth speaking about. I mean, there's multiple symbols for it. Of course, it's not singular. Nothing's that simple with Hecate. But it's the common one, particularly in the modern times, and what I use in Embodied Astrology, shows 3 serpent-type creatures woven around a centre of fire. It's a stylized version of that. And it's sort of saying that, through self-knowledge, inner wisdom, doing this inner work, we get to lead back to our own light. And really the true magic lies within, and it's actually going into the shadow, going into the unconscious, that we get illumination, insight, direction. So there's the essence of Hecate. I guess you could go so far if you wanted to get more of a diagnostic astrology and look at where Hecate shows up for people who are into divination, healing, witchery, or alchemy. Yeah, hocus pocus. I think that's fortune tellers, tarot readers, psychics. But also even just get really 21st century gamblers and speculators and futurists who want to try and figure out where things are going to go before it's even happened yet. So to be able to see the unseen, to be able to read the deeper pattern, to have a sense of how things are unconsciously emerging and organically unfolding, to go, I know where to go next. Yeah.
Hecate doesn't usually come up in a traditional, you don't know where it is in your chart usually.
Yeah.
It's got like a specific.
Unless you work with it, a lot of astrologers don't work with Hecate. Yeah.
I was going to say, because I've got to have the birth charts done also, but I've never Hecate there to know where she plays out or whatever.
Yeah. She's.
You'd be able to find that out somehow. So that's right. Was it 1868 or so?
Yeah. Well, it's around, and it's all the asteroids have numbers. You can look it up on. Yeah. And any good software, and there's the free site you can do it. And I always use her in my charts, and that's what my teacher did as well. I found her very illuminating. So she's also, she's that shamanic crone. You can it gets really magical with Hecate. You can also show up as really freaking dark and confusing at first, and unclear, and the very opposite of magical, and insight and clarity and being able to see through walls. And in an unhealthy version, I guess, or a really low vibration, you could see Hecate as someone who wants to get to other worlds, or Hecate might play out as a wounded Hecate, or as an unconscious Hecate, as someone who's more on drugs, or back to the Dionysus as wine, right? And we come back again to this sort of unconscious, trying to cross into the world or get into altered states, following kind of unintegrated, unhealthy means that don't actually serve us very well. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be an addict or have problems. You might just have confusion somewhere and want change, right? Or want to be getting altered states in that area of your life, or crossing dimensions. But it can also be where you're driven for metamorphosis. That really healthiest interpretation. So it could be that's where your inner counsellor or psychotherapist or coach, modern healer shows up.
Yes, it's modern equivalent would be the psychoanalyst.
Yeah.
The guide who takes you on the journey into the unconscious.
Yeah. Yes. Psychoanalysis is on point. Is there anything else you might say about Hecate from what you know of experience?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say Hecate would be related to Yesod on the Tree of Life, which is the ninth Sephiroth, and the nines in tarot, because that's where you take the path in moonlight to the altar, basically, in the open air in moonlight, and that's the engaging with Hecate. It's that path you've got to walk to leave behind the physical world to go into the spirit world. That shifting consciousness, that transition, that border, it's right at the bottom of the Tree of Life. It's the gate.
Yeah. She's there at the gateway. And yeah, beautifully again with the same symbols in the moonlight, this unconscious, the altered states.
I think the animals as well, I think they're going on the path coming from this, like from memory. I think you've got the winged lion, the winged man, the winged something else, and the directions. So it is all about the same sort of witchy elements.
And the crossroads, the direction,
Crossroads.
where are you going, what direction do you go, and actually transcending that. Yeah. Beautiful, isn't it?
And I think there's something there, I don't know about Asian Eastern mythology, but I imagine third eye activation, all that sort of thing must be somehow related to Hecate as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess any of that, the altered states, all states of consciousness, ability to change and go through them. It's definitely there. I know, the voice dialogue process we use in Embodied Astrology is a Hecate process. So there's the magic or the alchemical steps, the ingredients for the witch's spell to put ourselves in an altered state and allow insight and wisdom and clarity to happen, or emerge. You can say all the transformational processes you do, all are involved in metamorphosis of transforming ourselves, of taking our dense substance or shadow and knots and generating a more wild, aliveness. This might just echo a lot of everything we've already said, but just feel to finish off here by reading just a little bit from the classic old mythic tarot, primarily by Liz Green. And she equates Hecate with the moon. It's the moon in mythic tarot that has the dog, and the moon, three moon phases on her head, and dressed in white, and so on. On an inner level, Hecate the moon goddess is an image of the mysterious watery depths of the unconscious. We've already encountered this strange and elusive realm in two other cards in the major arcana, the High Priestess and the Wheel of Fortune. Here on the card of the moon, we find in the image of Hecate an experience of the great collective sea of the unconscious, from which not only the individual, but the whole of life has emerged. Hecate is more than a portrayal of personal depths. She embodies the feminine principle of life itself. And the three faces, the three lunar phases, reflect her multifaceted power over heaven, earth, and the underworld. In psychological terms, it is from this ocean or oceanic realm of the human imagination that the great myths and religious symbols and works of art are born over the centuries. It is a chaotic, confusing, unbounded world of which the individual, with their personal journey and search for self, are only a tiny part. The meeting with Hecate, the moon goddess, is a confrontation with a transpersonal world, where individual boundaries dissolve and the sense of direction and ego are lost. It is as though we must wait submerged in the waters of this world while the new potentials arise, which will eventually become our future. The dark waters of the collective unconscious contain both negative and positive, and it is sometimes hard to distinguish its shifting movements from madness and delusion. It can be a frightening, anxiety-provoking world, for living in the realm over which Hecate presides means living without knowledge and clarity. Something has washed over us which cleanses the past and prepares the way for the future, but we must wait, just as the fetus waits in the womb. The only road to Hecate's world is the royal road of dreams. Well, I'd say altered states of any through substance or ritual or meditation. So, which, like the crab, tantalizes us with a glimpse and then slips back into the water again. The card of the moon is a card of gestation, full of confusion, anxiety, and bewilderment. We have nothing but the dream world and the star of hope to guide us, for this image of the feminine is not a personal one, like that of Persephone, the high priestess. It is a vague and elusive and impersonal, embodying itself to shifting moods and confusion. Hecate is never really graspable, for she is a goddess of magic and initiates the fool into a world greater than himself, that primal water out of which all life comes. So there's a lot of sort of kind of negative connotation there, but it is the that in between, the immersion in the unconscious, and for me then the torch of the light that goes and deals with the shadow can and will come into the future, and will bring up more power or capacity or to manifest.
I think one of the key things is she's not personal, it's that transpersonal. So you can have an insight and you go, oh, I get that, that's come up from me, I get that. But sometimes you have an experience, it's completely outside your person, and all you can do is say, well, it's spirit. So the spiritual nature, it's something greater than me.
Ourselves,
It wasn't from my experience or my understanding. It's just there. It's like a spiritual insight. That's when Hecate is present.
For me that's
bigger than self.
An archetypal wisdom, a collective unconscious emergent insight or creative piece. You often hear from artists that the music came to me or flowed through me. You hear it from other healers. It's like they're just connecting to another dimension, and the healing comes from there and through them. They're just a channel, not the not the creator. It's very interesting. So, slippery and elusive Hecate, but powerful. And my encountering with her in the astrological medicine wheel, she's shown up as first that utter confusion and pain and like self-torturous and messy, and also I'd say quite nasty acting out of poltergeisty kind of like I'm beating myself in the head but I don't know I'm even doing it to myself, or other people's unconscious stuff's having a go at me and I can feel it and like what's that even happening, and it's sort of quite confusing. But then given birth to the experiences of it's like medicine women dancing and doing magic with their feet and their sound and their breath throughout times immemorial. So it's really strange to find myself as a man being danced by a big black, so I assume African woman on tribal plains doing definitely really tribal dance and moves and sounds and feeling the energy and life transform around me because of it. Really quite amazing. Whose it was Hecate's. So, Hecate.